its preventive and control aspects. So plague, it's again a communicable disease, zoonotic disease. Zoonotic disease means any disease which is transmitted to human being through animals. Okay, animal to human being. If animal plays the role of role in transmission, then it is called zoonotic disease. And it's communicable disease, and it's acute communicable zoonotic disease of rodents. So specifically, you have to understand that it's primarily a disease of rodents. Rodents means rats and mice, and rats are the mostly affected animals. Okay, and through rodents, human beings are affected. Okay, so and it is caused by bacilli called Yersinia pestis. So it's a bacteria which is involved, which causes plague is Yersinia pestis, and it affects the rodents. Okay, and the vector is flea. Flea. Okay, rat flea is the vector over here, which actually carries Yersinia pestis from the rodents. Okay, while sucking blood and goes and bites human being and inoculates Yersinia bacteria into the human blood, human body. Okay, that's how a cycle goes on. So basically, it's a disease of rats, which is accidentally is transmitted to human beings. Okay, and Yersinia pestis is the name. It earned its name. It got its name from a bacteriologist, Alexander Pestine. Okay, this bacteria was named after him because he discovered this bacteria. So it is transmitted from the rodents to the human beings accidentally by the bite of infected rat flea. So see, it is transmitted from the rodents to human beings accidentally by the bite of infected rat flea. So, like in case of malaria, mosquito is the vector, your rat flea is the vector, and the bacteria is Yersinia pestis. Okay, and plague was one of the three epidemic diseases specifically reportable to the World Health Organization. So, plague is one of the three epidemic diseases which is reportable to the World Health Organization. What does that mean? That if in Nepal, in any part of our Nepal, if plague is seen, we have to immediately inform to the World Health Organization people. Okay. So other two epidemic diseases are cholera and yellow fever. So cholera, yellow fever, and plague is one of the notifiable disease. Okay, and it occurs in many forms. So if you see, plague occurs in many forms. It occurs in the form of enzotic or enzotically. Enzotically means an endemic occurring in animals. So in animals, it is prevalent. It's still you know the meaning of endemic. Okay, so it's an endemic disease, endemic plague occurring in animals throughout the year. In particular area is endogenically or epigenetically also it can be available. And epigenetically means an epidemic of disease in animals. Okay, outbreak. It causes outbreak once. Frequently on periodic basis, or sporadically can also it can present as it can occur sporadically also. So sporadically means occurring haphazardly, irregularly. Okay, or in the form of epidemics also. Okay, so epidemics, outbreak of disease in particular area. Okay, exotically and endemic occurring in animals. So in animals it is always present. Episodically means occurring in animals, unusual occurrence in animals which was not present beforehand, but then it occurs. Exotically it's always there. It's like common cold, it's always there in the country. Once and again it flares up, but it doesn't cause any epidemic. Okay, so I hope you are familiar with these terms. Okay, so going back to the historical background briefly, it's not a new disease. Okay, it was there at the Middle East. It was many people died in the Middle East because of this disease, and it was called as Black Death. Okay, plague was the disease called a death caused by plague was named as Black Death. Okay, and association of this disease with rats is mentioned in Bhagavad Puran also. Okay, if some of you have read Bhagavad Puran, so it was 1500 to 800 BC before Christ. It was mentioned in the Bhagavad Puran, stating that as soon as dead rats are seen, the residence should be immediately vacated. Okay, so if rats are dying, suspiciously. You have not poisoned them, you haven't done anything, but they're dying, and then dying inside house and outside house, and you have to suspect plague. Okay, and it's also known as Mahamari, the great killer at that time. Okay, and the first record of plague was an outbreak amongst the Philistine in 1320 BC when God enacted his vengeance upon them for capturing his ark, which belonged to Israel. One. So much disturbance. So in 1320, they used to believe that, that their superstition belief was very much strong at that time. So, and during that era, they used to think that it was like God became angry. When the God becomes angry, then they spread this disease called plague. Okay, so the three world pandemics is very famous. Okay, is Justinian's plague. It was in 540 to 700 AD. The Black Death, which occurred around 1346 to 1350 AD, and the China epidemic, 1855 to 1908. And this China epidemic, also known as modern pandemic. So see, this pandemic, Corona pandemic, we are living through this. But if you see the go into the past, then every 80 to 100 years, this we have, I mean, human being have been facing this kind of pandemics. Obviously disease is always different. Okay, sometimes it's plague, sometimes it's due to smallpox, sometimes it's flu, but this pandemic has been occurring, if you go and see the history also. So if you see, the three biggest pandemics had occurred because of plague only. Okay, and then, okay, so Justinian plague pandemic, so it occurred in 6th century. Now we are in 20th century, and it occurred in the 60th century. And see, 10,000 deaths per day. And okay, it was recorded and confirmed during the Roman Emperor Justinian. So it was in Roman era it occurred, and millions of people died because of this disease. And because of this disease, the Roman Empire also it was also fallen. Okay, fallen down because of that disease. Many people died, and many damage was done occurred. So second one is Black Death pandemic. So they call it this disease Black Death because a person suffering from plague, they develop this symptom. They get this enlarged lymph nodes, enlarged tender lymph nodes, and it becomes blackened. That enlarged lymph nodes becomes blackened. So because of that, they got this name. Yeah, okay, because the lymph nodes which enlarged becomes uh, black once the person suffers from plague. That's why they put the disease name as Black Death. Okay, so in 14th century again this pandemic occurred, and 25 million lives were claimed because of that disease. And this quarantine concept was put forward in this 14th century. People used to, I told you, okay, not, I have not told you, in an international head I'll be talking. So in ancient period, they didn't call it quarantine. They used to detain it for the 40 days. So here now for Corona, we talk about isolating or staying in quarantine for 14 days. But at that time, they didn't know the exact incubation period of the disease. So they used to isolate the person or put person in quarantine for 40 days. Whenever the travelers returning from the cargo ships from other countries, they used to detain them for at least 40 days, which was highly debated. It was, people protested that, because living in a certain area and in isolated area for 40 days is, it's just like almost 1 month, 10 days. So it's a big deal. I mean, it causes lots of inconvenience in the traders and travelers. So it was, um, debated, and it was failure at the time. So this quarantine, however, and in today's era we call it quarantine. So quarantine concept came at that time, and 1/4 of European population died at that time. Okay, and half the total population died in England. So it was, and also responsible for the introduction of hospitals and care centers. So at this time, you know establishment of hospitals and care centers took place because of this pandemic. And in 1665, Great Plague of London. So London was also affected, and, and millions of people died during that time. Okay, and modern public health practices were initiated at that time after this plague pandemic. Okay, so disease reporting started. Okay, closing of homes, detaining homes, everything was started. Then the China epidemic. Then it slowly moved towards the China in the 19th century, and it has spread by 1900. It has spread via steamship to the rest of the world. See, plague through a human movement, you know, it gets migrated to different parts of the world. So in places where you'll not find, I mean, this kind of vectors or rodents that much also, people might suffer from the plague because of this migration, human migration from one place to another. Okay, and least severe of the three pandemics. It was, however, least severe as compared to the other pandemics. Okay, and it was called the modern pandemic. And in 20th century, if we talk about today's era, so this is the latest data I could get for you, which was published by World Health Organization in October 2017. They say that from 2010 to 2017, including 584 deaths. Okay, and this is the latest data available. And currently, the three most endemic countries are the Democratic Republic of Congo, Madagascar, and Peru. Okay, and there are only 38 countries that report plague activity. And the three most endemic countries, okay, this is the same thing. Peru, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Madagascar is the endemic country existing at this in this era. And plague can be a very severe disease in people with case fatality ratio of 30 to 60%. Okay, so case fatality rate is very, very high, 30 to 60% for the bubonic type, and is always fatal for the pneumonic kind when left untreated. So these are the types of plague in human: bubonic and pneumonic. Pneumonic is when, bubonic means when it enters the blood circulation and causes enlargement of the lymph nodes, the groins, and other parts of the body. And pneumonic, when it enters the lung and it affects the um, lung, and when this bacilli effect starts affecting the lungs, and what happened, the person, the transmission can take place from human to human through the respiratory route. Okay, so I'll be discussing that in my next class. So in India also, in several year, it affected the people out there. In 1994 also, it caused more than 6 lakhs people to flee from Surat was, I mean, the place which was affected at that time. Okay, there's so many people, 5,150 cases suspected from 26 states, 53 confirmed fatalities. Okay, and then in 2002 February also, okay, 16 cases of pneumonic plague was found. In 2010 also, again in Peru, it was 17 cases was found. And this Madagascar is island country in India Ocean. Okay, and that is in 2014 it was reported. The 119 cases were reported, and 40 deaths were reported in 2014 in India. Okay, so in Nepal, I couldn't find much, but this is the only thing that I found, that in 1960 to 1962, total of 150 cases were reported in Rupandeli and Mohtari districts. And in 67 to 68, 17 of the 26 patients died before the investigation began in Badang. So it was first seen in Rupandeli and Mohtari district, and then in 67 in the Badang district. And 4 isolates of Yersinia pestis were obtained from human specimen. Okay, and Pulex irritant was reported to be the vector that was removed from dogs in the affected village in Nepal. Okay, so Pulex irritans is the flea that was reported in Nepal. Okay, and was removed from the dogs in the affected village. Okay, that much in the history part. Okay, um, and let's move on to epidemiological determinants. So, as in factors, I've already told you, Yersinia pestis. Okay, it's also called as Pasteurella pestis. So, but you can remember as Yersinia pestis, it's a gram-negative, non-spore forming, non-motile coccobacillus. And when stained with Giemsa, the bacillus shows to have a bipolar or safety pin appearance. So, what do you mean by bipolar or safety pin? So, see, it looks like a safety pin after getting stained, isn't it? There is a hole in between, and the Here also, this is not that so much clear. This one, it looks like a safety pin. Bipolar means the opposite poles are stained. Okay, it's a stained with color, but the central portion is unstained, or it is lightly stained. Okay, so that is called bipolar stain. So bipolar or safety pin appearance will be seen under microscope after staining. And bacilli occur in great abundance in buboes. Buboes means enlarged tender lymph nodes in groins, spleen, blood, liver, and other viscera of infected person, and in sputum of pneumonic plague. So bacilli can be easily isolated from those specimens. But specimens obtained from the buboes, spleen, blood, liver, and other viscera, okay, of infected person. In any other viscera, you can just find, you can just take out the specimen, and you can, you know, make a smear of it, and you can, under the microscope, you can see it. And in sputum also, in case of pneumonic plague. And plague bacilli can survive and multiply in soil of rodent burrows. So plague bacilli, Yersinia pestis, can actually survive and multiply in soil of rodent burrows. So you know that rodents, they make these burrows, they dig the earth, and they make the place where they, you know, hibernate during winters, and they stay inside. So in those burrows, this bacilli are found in abundant number, and they can survive there, and they can multiply there, okay, in the soil itself. And its virulence is the ability of producing endotoxin. So it can produce endotoxin, exotoxin, fraction 1 antigen. So these are the, you know, toxins and antigens which determines the virulence of the Yersinia pestis. Because of this, endotoxins and exotoxins is, you know, it can cause many deaths in the people. Okay. So, who are the reservoir of infections? The wild rodents, obviously. See, rodents, it could be wild rodents, it could be domestic rodents or peri-domestic rodents. Okay, so wild rodents are the natural reservoirs of plague. So wild rodents which lives in the forest, okay, like field mice, chipmunks, they don't live nearby the humans, okay, they live in the jungles, forests, okay, and the fields. Field mice, chipmunks, you know, chipmunks, gerbil, skunks. If you don't know, just google the images, okay. These are the small rodents, okay, which are actually, these are the wild rodents, and they are the reservoirs of infection of this plague. And in India, so it is, I'm referring to park, and I couldn't find this plague in the since we don't have the national program against it in annual report, so I just brought whatever was already written in the book. Okay, the in India, the wild rodents. So you know, Nepal and India's context is quite similar. If it is present in India, it will be present in Nepal also. It's like that. Okay, so Tetera indica has been incremented as the main. So Tetera indica is a wild rodent which is, the main reservoir wild rodents in the wild rodents. So, I mean, it's a wild rodent which is acts the main reservoir and source of infections. So obviously, infected rodents who harbors this Yersinia bacteria, fleas who infect, who takes blood meals from these infected rodents, they will also carry the bacteria, and they'll also become infective. And cases of pneumonic plagues. So human beings who actually develop these pneumonic plagues, you know, it acts as a source of infection. They can spread the disease directly to other human being through droplet infection. Okay, so host factors. So we human beings, all ages and both sexes, are susceptible to plague. There's no gender bias here. And human activities like hunting grains, obviously, if people, you know, they love hunting, they spend most of the time in the forest, in the farm, you know, grazing, cultivation, who are involved in harvesting and construction activities, offer opportunities for flea man contact. So obviously, man has to come in contact with the flea, and flea, and this flea is a ectoparasite which lives in rodents, and rodents will be present in the fields and in the forests. So you have to remember like that. And these rodents, if it's a domestic rodent, then the domestic fleas, if infected, can also infect the human being. Okay, and movement of people, I told you, you know, through airplanes, through ships, through cargoes, you know, it can be migrated to different parts of the world, and a person living thousands of miles away in a place get the disease where plague is not suspected at all. Okay. And immunity, while talking about the immunity, man has no natural immunity. Immunity after recovery lasts for a short period only. So it's not of that much use. Okay, I mean, it's not that helpful. Once, if you think that you're once affected with the plague, now you'll get the lifelong immunity. It's not so. Similarly, in case of COVID-19, also people are getting reinfected with COVID-19. Immunity lasts for short period, or immunity doesn't last at all in COVID, but in plague, it lasts for a short period of time. So, what is the environmental factors then? If you talk about the season variation is seen in some part of the country. In some part of the country, seasonal variation is not seen at all. Okay, so while talking about mostly in some areas, plague season starts from September to May. They love, I mean, the favorable condition is when the temperature is 27 degrees Celsius or below that. If it increases, okay, with the onset of hot weather, the disease tends to die out. In hot weather, disease dies out, and in September to May, when the environment is cold, it becomes prevalent. Okay, it's called plague season. And in some areas, there was no definite plague season throughout the year. It was seen, and disease was found active all year round in some cases, some areas. Okay, so it depends on, like, different parts of the world. Some countries show seasonal variation, some countries do not show seasonal variation at all. And talking about the temperature and humidity, temperature of 30 degrees Celsius and relative humidity of 60% and above are favorable for spread of disease. So 30 degrees or below 30 degree. Okay, and relative humidity of 60% is very, very favorable for spread of disease. And rainfall, heavy rainfall, what happens? Heavy rainfall tends to flood the rat burrows. So rat burrows will be flooded by the heavy rainfall. It will destroy the place of reservoir. Okay, and responsible for keeping certain states free from plague. So some place in the world where the heavy rainfall occurs throughout the year, okay, they are free from the plague. And urban and rural areas, talking about that, plague had failed to gain a foothold in many towns, perhaps due to untoward ecological conditions and lack of efficient flea vectors. So what happens in a certain part of the urban areas, plague is not present, because that place are free from fleas. Okay, so because they are concerned about the personal hygiene. They take care of the personal hygiene, they take care about environmental sanitation. So in those places where environmental sanitation is maintained, personal hygiene is maintained, you don't have mice and rats at your home, then you will not get this disease. That's quite logical. And the temperature in places where temperature is very, very hot throughout the year, their also ecological condition is not favorable for their growth. Okay, so it will not be present. So human dwellings, poor housing conditions will lead to abundance of rats and rat fleas. Obviously, especially in poor housing condition, you will have lots of rats, and if you have lots of rats, there will be lots of rat fleas. So natural calamities like flood, earthquake predisposes to epidemics of plague. So after any natural disaster takes place, we have to be very, very careful, because many outbreaks can occur, diarrheal outbreaks or any disease outbreak can occur. So you have to be very, very careful, especially in endemic areas. So vectors of plague is rat flea. They are called Genopsila Chiopsis, Genopsila Astia, Genopsila vacillians, and most common vector is the Genopsila Chiopsis. Okay, and both sexes bite and transmit the disease. So flea. How does it look? Flea means upia, upia. Right? I don't know what is it is called in Hindi. In Nepali, it is called upia, and it is bilaterally compressed wingless creature. Okay, and male and female both blood sucking ectoparasites. So it's unlike Anopheles mosquito, both male and female, they suck blood, okay, from the rodents, if rodents not available, from the humans. Okay, and can live off host for months. Okay, so survival, the lifespan is very, very long. If they can without eating also, they can live for months. Okay, and they ingest 0.5 cubic millimeter of blood containing 5,000 plague bacilli. 5,000 plague bacilli in 0.5 cubic millimeter of blood. Okay, And while talking about the vector, there is interestingly there are two types of infected fleas. Infected fleas who ingest this blood, which contains Yersinia um, pestis, bacilli. They could be blood infected flea or partial blood flea. Okay, this is the actual size of the flea, and this is after blood meal. This blood enters and stays in the gut of the flea. Now here, if you see, blood is blocked in the stomach. Okay, so blood flea. What do you mean by blood flea? A flea may ingest up to, I told you, 0.5 millimeter of blood, which may contain as many as 5,000 plague bacilli. The bacilli multiply in the gut of rat flea and may block the proventriculus so that no food can pass through it. Such a flea is called blood flea. So proventriculus is a valve which connects esophagus with the midgut of the fleas. Okay, so it automatically opens and closes while feeding. Okay, now what happens, this very proventriculus which connects the esophagus with the midgut is blocked through the blood. Okay, the blood, after ingestion, it just blocks the valve. And now what happens inside the stomach, this in the proventriculus itself, this bacilli multiply. No, they're saying bacilli multiply in the gut of rat flea. So okay, so the bacilli multiply after ingestion of the blood meal from the infected rodent. Bacilli multiply in the gut of rat flea, and what happens? It becomes in high number and it blocks the proventriculus. Now the valve which connects the midgut with the esophagus will be blocked here because of the multiplication of the bacilli in the gut. And now this is blood flea. Now the blood flea, what will happen? Now after some time, this bacilli actually gets stuck in the floor of the midgut. Okay, and they block the passes. They block the proventriculus. And now what happens, after some time the flea will get hungry. Now what happens when it gets hungry? Now they try to obtain blood meal, but what happens, since the proventriculus is blocked, they cannot ingest the blood inside the body. Okay, so as they becomes very very hungry, they makes frantic efforts to bite and suck blood over and over again. Okay, so what happens in that process, when it makes frantic efforts to suck the blood, okay, this bacilli gets regurgitated into the bite wound each time it bites. So whoever it's biting, whether it's rodent or human being, all the bacilli which is present inside the body in the proventriculus, through the proventriculus, gets inoculated or regurgitated to the bite wound. Okay, so that is blood flea, and blood flea is an efficient transmitter of plague. So blood flea is an efficient transmitter because it bites several times. Okay, and in that process, all the bacilli get inoculated in the another rat or and human being. So another term is partially blood flea. The proventriculus is only partially blocked. So in blood flea, proventriculus is completely blocked. Okay, and in partially blocked flea, proventriculus is only partially blocked with plaque bacilli leaving a canal in the center. So in the center, it will not be blocked, and the periphery only it will be blocked, and it is blocked by the bacilli itself. Okay, not by nothing else. It's by the bacilli. Bacilli is there, accumulates there, and it just blocks the passes. It is more dangerous than a completely blocked flea because it can live longer and can bite. See, partially blocked means they can ingest and they can swallow a certain amount of blood. Okay, they can drink blood. I mean, ingest blood. It is because the proventriculus is not completely blocked. And now what happens once they keep on getting food, they will survive, isn't it? So it can live longer and can bite more number of persons. So it is more dangerous in that way. Okay, as compared to the completely blocked flea. And also the blood is regurgitated with greater force into the wound. Yeah, in this case. And okay, so after this, here you have to understand is blocked flea is efficient transmitter of plague, but partially blocked fleas are more dangerous than the completely blocked flea. So there are two terms You have to understand rodents. I told you it could be wild rodents which are found in the forest, in the fields, okay, and they are a reservoir of plague in nature. So natural foci we call it, because it's there in the nature. They are available. God has created them. And Tetera indica, Bondicota, and B indica, they are the wild rodents. And commensal rodents. These are the terminologies used for the domestic rodents, commensal rodents, which live close to man. Rattus rattus. You must have, heard about this species. Rattus rattus is a domestic rat, which is present in each household. It is a common species, which is available in the households. Okay, and R. norvicus is found in the sewer, and Mus musculus. So these are the commensal rodents which are present inside the house, which are present in the sewer system. Okay, which live nearby the house. So unblocked. So here this one is showing the unblocked, uninfected flea on the left. Okay, there's no blockage here. Because of the blockage, all the blood is getting, all the blood and all the food in the midgut is stuck here, and it couldn't pass, okay, from here. And blood cannot pass from the proventriculus to the midgut. It has been blocked. So flea indices, how you can find out, whether, any if we are spraying insecticide against it, how can we find out whether it's effective or not, whether the fleas are actually decreasing in number or not. So for that you need flea indices. So they are total flea index. Total flea index means the average number of fleas of all species found in per rat. Okay, per rat, how many average number of fleas is present, that is called total flea index. And Cheopsis index is the average number of X Cheopis per rat. Average number of X Cheopis per rat. This is being more specific. This is irrespective of the species. This is specifically we check whether we will check measure the average number of Genopsilla cheopsis per rat, and more significant than total flea index if it is more than one, indicative of possible outbreak. So Cheopis index should be less than one if you do not want outbreak to occur. And specific percentage of fleas, that is the percentage of different species of fleas that are found in rats, can also be calculated. And Burrow index, as we've been discussing that, these Yersinia bacteria, they can actually survive and multiply in the rat burrows. Average number of free living fleas per species per rodent burrow. The average number of free living fleas, okay, per species per rodent burrow. So per rodent burrow, how many free living fleas are there? So its average number will give you the Burrow index. If the Burrow index number is high, then we have to be, outbreak can occur in such places also. Now, briefly, we'll talk about the plague rodents and we'll stop. Okay, so there are three or four slides more coming up to your way. Okay, and don't then I'll stop it after that. Okay, so plague in rodents. So rodents in your book, plague in rodents and plague in humans are given. I have not seen questions being asked about the rodents plague. And in 2016, when I took the class, I didn't discuss about this in detail, but I thought that if you want to know about the human plague in detail, okay, its concept, then you should be clear about the plague in rodents, because we get the plague from the rodents. So first of all, we should know what happens actually in rodents. Otherwise, it's just incomplete. Okay, so I don't know whether it will be asked or not, but for your information, for your knowledge, I think you have to learn about this. Okay, so rodents plague is primarily a disease of rodents in which man becomes accidentally involved, which I've already told you in the beginning of my slide. So approximately 1,700 species of rodents are known worldwide. Okay, so of which over 200 species are associated with plague. So 200 species of rats are associated with plague, and these are found in mountains, deserts, cultivated area, and forests throughout the world. Okay, and rodents may be classified into distinct groups: wild rodents, unconventional rodents, which I've already told you. Okay, which I've already discussed. Only thing I have not discussed is the peri-domestic species. So don't get confused with that. Commensal rodents includes domestic and peri-domestic species. Domestic means which live nearby the human. I told you Rattus norvegicus, and Mus musculus. And these domestic species seldom live in. They domestic rodents. They do not live in fields. They live in the houses, inside the houses, or in where there is sewer system, in the sewer. Okay. Now, peri-domestic species means they can live both in fields and houses. Okay, that's the only difference. They can live in fields, in paddy fields, in rice fields, and houses as well. Whereas the domestic, they mainly live inside the house and seldom, very rarely in the fields. And what are the species of very domestic rodents? Are Noricus. Okay, is the one. Okay, so this terminology was there in the book. So I've already just told you briefly what it does that mean in the beginning of my class. But plague is epizootic and enzotic in wild rodents. Okay, in wild rodents, it can present as epizootic and enzotic. Okay, so wild plague means what? Okay, wild plague is defined as plague existing in nature, independent of human populations and their activities. When disease spreads among wild rodents by wild rodent fleas. Okay, in wild plague, wild rodents um, get affected by this virus. Sorry, bacteria. Yersinia, Yersinia. Okay, and then this rodent fleas, while ingesting blood, get infected, and through rodent fleas, we, you know, human beings get infected. So where there is involvement of wild rodents and wild fleas, it is called wild plague. Okay, and those and this epizootic wipes out the. So epizootic means which causes outbreak due to animal plague. Okay, and during this epizootic, all the susceptible population will be wiped out, they say, and those that survive, what the resistant species, maintain the enzootic in natural foci. Okay, and then comes domestic plague. Is defined as plague that is intimately associated with man and rodents living with him and has a definite potential for producing epidemics. So domestic plague caused by domestic rats, by domestic fleas, and that is domestic. The rodents which live nearby to human beings leads to domestic plague. So natural foci is something like so it's there. Rodent plague is established in its natural foci. So as long as rodents are present in the forest, in the fields, in the downhills, so we cannot say that we are free from plague. Okay, and this natural focus of plague has been defined as strictly delimited area where ecological conditions ensure the persistence of the ecological agent for considerable periods of time, and where epizootics and periods of coincidence alternate without introduction of infection from outside. So natural foci means it is there. It's there in the nature. Okay, it's a limited area where ecological conditions, the temperature and the humidity is favorable for the growth of the vectors, for the growth of the rodents, for the growth of the bacilli, and it occurs in epizootics and periods of quiescence. So it will occur as a epizootics and outbreak in certain period, and then again for a certain period of time it will remain in a dormant phase, and this phase will alternate, and this it's just unaffected by the human activities, but it's still there in the world, in outside the human dwellings. Okay, and the um, epizootic and enzootic process in each natural